So is this a moral situation or an ethical situation? What's the difference between morals and ethics anyway? Anybody?
Bueller. Bueller. Bueller.
Matthew Broderick and Reese Witherspoon shine in Alexander Payne's Election, a 1999 film that centers almost entirely around a typical high school election in Omaha, Nebraska. Like most Payne films, this is entirely character-driven. In other words, it's not much of a story in itself. It's more like how we see the characters react to certain situations, and this makes the film a compelling watch. The crazy thing is that most of the characters in Election are very flawed and disingenuous and mask their true flawed personas. Election shows how these people are untruthful to themselves. They give their own perspectives at various points using narration. Many of these perspectives are lies. It's like if you lie to yourself 1,000 times, you'll start believing the lie. Jim McAllister is a high school history teacher. We're supposed to believe he lives a reasonably happy life. He loves his wife, and he finds his job fulfilling.
I loved my job. I was a teacher, an educator, and I couldn't imagine doing anything else. The students knew it wasn't just a job for me. I got involved. I made a difference. I knew I touched the students' lives during their difficult young adult years. I was voted Teacher of the Year 3 times, a school record. Teaching was all I'd ever wanted to do.
We learn in reality he finds his job monotonous, and his relationship with his wife is dull, with no hint of or any spark of romance or love between them. When he has the opportunity, he sneaks off and watches porn to fulfill his needs. Yet, Jim internally tries to tell himself how wonderful things are with his wife and his life.
Thank God for Diane. She was my best friend, my source of love and strength. Oh, sure, we'd had our share of bumpy times, but we'd always seen them through. After 9 years of marriage, we were closer than ever.
Anything wrong?
No. Just, school.
His crappy car indicates he's not very well off. His only friend is a fellow teacher who's really a grown-up teenager who gets into trouble. Jim McAllister lives a lonely, unfulfilled life. Diane McAllister is Jim's wife, and even though she doesn't narrate, we know she's dishonest from her body language and expression. She just seems to see Jim as a sperm donor while pretending to love him.
Good job.
Dave Novotny is the only friend of Jim. Dave convinces himself that he's in love with a student, and there's nothing wrong with that, and that he, a 30-something-year-old teacher, having an affair with a 16-year-old student is okay.
Seems to me like you might need a friend. Jim, what I'm trying to tell you is that Tracy and I are totally in love. We're in love.
Dave doesn't narrate and has a short role in the movie. His purpose is to give more insight into the female student he had an affair with. Racy Flick is a smart high school student who is running for student president. She is lonely too. She wants to be popular, but her passive-aggressive personality is so off-putting that no one really likes her. She makes up for her loneliness by being part of every school function imaginable and uses that to convince herself she is well-liked and respected. She's uber-ambitious and secretly believes she's better than everyone else.
people say I'm an overachiever, but I think they're just jealous. My mom always tells me I'm different, special. And if you look at all the things I've accomplished so far, I think you'd have to agree.
She also likes to play innocent. But it's clear she is not, and she used the affair with Dave Novotny to quell her loneliness and need for attention. Attention she wasn't getting from her fellow students. She may not be innocent, but she is naive and doesn't yet understand the world outside of high school.
Now that I have more life experience, I feel sorry for Mr. McAllister. Anyone who's stuck in the same little room, wearing the same stupid clothes, saying the exact same things year after year for his whole life, while his students go on to good colleges and move to big cities and do great things and make loads of money.
And note her naivete regarding why she had the affair.
You probably think the worst, that Mr. Novotny was taking horrible advantage of one of his students, but it wasn't like that at all. Our relationship was based on mutual respect and admiration. Since I grew up without a dad, you might assume psychologically I was looking for a father figure, but that had nothing to do with it at all. It was just that Dave was so strong, and he made me feel so safe and protected.
There's a clue in Tracy's name. There are several instances where we see both the F and L capitalized while the other letters are not. It suggests a different word other than flick. This is most obvious in looking at her cupcakes. Tammy Metzler is a rather typical high school student who's reasonably honest. She has typical teen angst and a problem with her sexual identity. This appears to be the only area where she is dishonest to herself.
It's not like I'm a lesbian or anything. I'm attracted to the person. It's just that all the people I've ever been attracted to happen to be girls.
Tammy is in denial regarding her relationship with another female student. Tammy believes it to be romantic, but she's wrong.
What's your favorite fruit?
Pears. Apples. I also like bananas.
Of all the characters focused upon in the movie, the only truly honest one is Tammy's brother, Paul Metzler, who also happens to be an idiot. Election focuses on Jim McAllister and Tracy Flick. They both continually lie throughout the movie. Jim's lies seem benign and justifiable, while Tracy's lies appear to be more egregious. In both cases, their respective walls of dishonesty have the potential of tumbling down upon them. While Jim, as an adult, is able to mask his true feelings convincingly most of the time, Tracy, being a teenager, cannot help but reveal what is within.
You might think it upset me that Paul Metzler had decided to run against me, but nothing could be further from the truth. He was no competition for me. It was like apples and oranges. I had to work a little harder, that's all. You see, I believe in the voters. They understand that elections aren't just popularity contests. They know this country was built by people just like me, who work very hard and don't have everything handed to them on a silver spoon. Not like some rich kids who everybody likes because their fathers own Metzler Cement and give them trucks on their 16th birthday and throw them big parties all the time. No, they don't ever have to work for anything. They think they can just all of a sudden one day out of the blue waltz right in with no qualifications whatsoever and try to take away what other people have worked for very, very hard their entire lives. No, didn't bother me at all.
Just looking at that face, I could easily be convinced that Tracy Flick was a serial killer in a horror movie. It's obvious that Jim despises Tracy. He seems to be the only one who doesn't buy into Tracy's projection of being an innocent schoolgirl. Perhaps his own falseness is why he's wise to her. Funny though, early on Jim says to himself that he admires Tracy.
Dave was an adult more than twice her age. Sure, she got on my nerves once in a while, but I admired Tracy. I really did.
So is this a moral situation or an ethical situation? What's the difference between morals and ethics anyway? Anybody?
Ethics versus morals? The question's never answered, and the movie continually gives us examples that beg the question of which one is being violated. Tracy Flick claims to understand the difference and how important it is to be ethical.
Tracy.
Ethics are rules of conduct determined by a culture at a certain time in history. And you can't let anything or anyone stand in your way.
Hey! Hey! One per person! Put those back!
Eat me.
But you know, winning isn't everything. Win or lose, ethical conduct is the most important thing.
So keeping that in mind are the following ethics or moral issues.
What do you want it here?
Yeah. More this way.
Here?
Yeah.
Jim ogles his former friend's wife, Linda Novotny, but doesn't admit that in his monologue.
I'd always liked Linda, but we've never had a chance to spend any time alone together.
Gotta warm you up a little bit.
Now with Dave out of the picture, I began to see what an incredibly sensitive and giving person she was.
Jim starts to admit his attraction to Linda, but still denies his true feelings.
Oh, yeah. Fill me up.
God. Oh, God.
Oh,
Just
God.
like that.
Just like that.
Oh, yeah.
Do it, Jim.
Jim even fantasizes about Tracy Flick, the girl he hates. He would never admit this, though, especially to himself. Jim and Linda eventually do initiate an affair. Doesn't last very long. Is this a breakdown of morals or ethics? Do Jim's lies and fantasies lead to this? Who's harmed by these actions? Then we get Tracy's breakdown on crime. Her frustration with not being able to keep a poster up sets her off. Now nobody will have posters. Remember this?
But you know, winning isn't everything. Win or lose, ethical conduct is the most important thing.
Did Tracy commit a breach of ethics or morals? Tracy's justification for committing her crime was simply to benefit herself. It can be argued that the entire school was affected by this action, though, so harm to society was done. And Tracy is convinced she committed the perfect crime. She's sure no one saw her. Jim McAllister is onto her, though, because he knows that logically she's the only person who could have committed the crime. Also, he's aware that Tracy is not what she seems to be. Now, watch how Tracy starts by playing innocent. Doesn't work, so she starts blaming others. Jim confronts her about that, and then she gets nasty and aggressive.
If it's about the posters, I think it's awful. I think it's a travesty.
Travesty, huh? Well, that's interesting.
Because I think you did it.
What? You know, instead of wasting your time interrogating me, we should be out there trying to figure out who did this.
Okay, Tracy.
Who do you think did it? Whom should we interrogate?
Well, I don't know. You know, it could have been anybody. There's a lot of subversive elements here at Carver.
I agree. And I also think that certain young and naive people need to thank their lucky stars and be very, very grateful that the entire school didn't find out about certain indiscretions that could have ruined their reputations and their chances to win certain elections.
And I think certain older people, like you and your colleague, shouldn't be leching after their students, especially when some of them can't even get their own wives pregnant.
But there is a twist. Jim didn't know, but we knew that Tammy Metzler had seen Tracy dispose of the evidence. The walls are about to crumble onto Tracy. That cocky look on her face has become one of terror. She is trapped. But there's another twist. Tammy commits her crime by confessing to a crime she didn't commit. Was this a moral or ethical crime? We know she did this not to help Tracy because she clearly dislikes her. She did it to make trouble for herself as she was in a dark state of mind and wanted to be expelled. She gets her wish. The harm done was that it allowed Tracy to get away with her crime. Jim commits his crime. He cheats to allow Paul Metzler to win the school presidency. Did Jim violate morals or ethics? Jim knew Tracy was guilty of tearing down all the posters and lying about it, so Jim could justify his action in thinking that Tracy deserved this and she deserved to lose and needed to be taught a lesson and knocked down a peg. Her spying on the election count served as the final straw that made Jim commit his crime. So moral or ethical? This is arguably the trickiest one to think about. Jim did this to punish Tracy for her crime. In his mind, he was doing something good.
Dear Lord Jesus, I do not often speak with you and ask for things, but now I really must insist that you help me win the election tomorrow, because I deserve it and Paul Metzler doesn't, as you well know.
In spite of everything, I still want Paul to win the election tomorrow, not that cunt Tracy. Oh, and I also want a really expensive pair of leather pants, and someday I want to be really good friends with Madonna.
And forgive me for my sins, whatever they may be. Amen.
The prayers reveal our characters. They're interesting even though they don't really tell us anything we don't already know. Tracy's is all about herself. She seems to think God favors her, which is amazing considering her levels of dishonesty. Tammy is self-centered as well, but she just seems to ask for pretty typical teenage girl stuff. Paul may be pretty clueless, but he has a heart of gold. In the end, it all ends up roses for Tracy, Paul, and Tammy. Tracy luckily got away with her crime and ended up being school president after all. She got everything she wanted. We learn later that she enters the world of politics. The only one who got punished was Jim, and he got punished hard. He pays the price for both the short-lived affair and his cheat against Tracy. Oddly, Jim wasn't shown praying. Is the movie trying to tell us something here?
None of this would have happened if Mr. McAllister hadn't meddled the way he did. He should have just accepted things as they are, instead of trying to interfere with destiny. You see, you can't interfere with destiny. That's why it's destiny. And if you try to interfere, the same thing's just going to happen anyway. And you'll just suffer.
Interesting, because things just did not turn out well for Jim. Everything did crash down on him. He loses his job, his wife, and his home. Well, he kept the crappy car, though. He ends up in New York City with a crappy apartment, a job at a museum, and a new girlfriend who just happens to look very much like his ex-wife. Yet Jim continues to try to be upbeat and tells us and himself that everything is good and he's over the whole election scandal.
I wasn't angry at her anymore. I just felt sorry for her. I mean, when I think about my new life and all the exciting things I'm doing, and then I think about what her life must be like, probably still getting up at 5 a.m. to pursue her pathetic little dreams, it just makes me sad. I mean, where is she really trying to get to anyway? And what is she doing in that limo? Who the fuck does she think she is?
I don't think he's really over it. And I can't help but notice that he's still lying to himself. Now, if you're wondering why director Alexander Payne decided to make a film with so many dishonest characters, remember the name of the movie. Dishonesty and politics seem to go hand in hand. This film comments on politics in general, and I'm going to be careful about not making any direct references to real people or political situations, especially from 1999, because I don't think that was the intent here. So, have you decided who committed moral crimes and who committed ethical crimes? Yeah, me neither. The movie never answers the question, why should I?